Welcome to Star Wars Newsnet Live. Sorry about the no introduction without the timer, but hey, this is first time here, Jay Goodall, at the helm for Star Wars Newsnet Live. But our regular host Tyler isn't here for this week. He's on vacation, enjoying his summer break alongside some of his he's a teacher, so he's enjoying his summer break aside from his students as well. But I am joined nonetheless by Luke. It is a pleasure to have you. How are you feeling today?
Hey, it's been honestly a rough Thursday at work, but I'm ready to have some fun here on Star Wars Newsnet and end my day on a good note. And I know you're kind of in the middle of your day over there in Hawaii, so
Yes, it is still kind of like the midday, mid-evening. But no, we got a lot to talk about today on our show.
yeah.
If you are on our YouTube channel, feel free to like and subscribe and join us in the chat. Leave a comments and join the conversation as we've got lots to talk about today for the show. We'll get started with a few introduction news headlines before getting into the Acolyte episode 4. There's a lot to break down and talk about in regards to that episode, and also some of our predictions and hopes for the rest of the show. But before we get into that, like I said, there's a lot of other news headlines that I think is worth talking about. The first one, Luke, I know you and Tyler are also big Star Wars comics fans.
Yeah.
Today, the news just broke that Marvel is actually ending its big comic run for Darth Vader and its mainline Star Wars comic. It's going to be ending with issue number 50.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I feel like this is, I'm not like a big Star Wars comic guy. I do follow like some of their other stuff. I like the High Republic stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, this has been a very long run for both series. How do you
Yeah,
feel
for
about
sure.
just both series is coming to an end like this?
I read the descriptions of kind of like how they end. It doesn't spoil anything.
Okay,
I mean, so we don't even know how it ends, but
for sure.
I think it's a testament to how successful and how good they've been that they've been able to keep this going for actually, you know, from a certain point of view, like 10 years really, because they did a 5-year comic run between 2015 and 2020. And that was between the movies A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. So this one that's been going, that is ending here soon, um, has been taking place between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi.
Right.
So I think it's really cool. The other one went 75 issues. The mainline one did. So this one only going 50. I mean, 50 is still a lot.
Yes, for sure.
I'm not down about it. And I'm actually still catching up. I'm not all the way caught up on that, but I think I think it's September that these end. By the time that rolls around, I should be able to be caught up. So I think I'm kind of excited because they also said that they're not done making Star Wars comics. They're going to go to a new era of the timeline to start making
Right.
comics, I believe.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to find out what that is. I'm kind of
Well,
hoping sequel trilogy, maybe.
yeah, no, I was just about to bring that up because I don't have the cover pulled up. I apologize, but for Star Wars number 50, the final issue, you can check it up on our website, starwarsnewsnet.com. But in the final issue, it has what we believe to be Ben Solo.
Yeah, I saw that on the
It,
cover. It looks like
yeah,
him.
it definitely does look like him, and it's like, we were like, yeah, that's gotta be him, right? So I thought that was really interesting, and like you said, I'm excited to finally get into like a different era, you know,
Yeah.
maybe even sequel stuff. But yeah, no, it is really surprising. I didn't really see this one coming. I thought like the comics were going pretty strong. And
Yeah.
I know like some of the most recent issues got, like, we here at Star Wars Newsnet have reviewed those issues and have given them pretty high scores. So I was a little bit surprised to see it coming to an end, but at the same time, I'm also very excited like you to get another new stories, new writers, new artists, all of that. So
Yeah. I think I don't know. I'm sure people disagree with this, but I think the more you flesh out and the more you give supplementary content to different eras, the stronger they get. So
Yeah.
I'm just excited to strengthen and beef up the post Return of the Jedi really era. So I mean, there's a lot of time to cover there. The sequel trilogy could be a cool place to do a comics about Rey
Yes.
and stuff
Yes.
about that. But also, if they wanted to, I mean, we've seen them do. They created a character, Doctor Aphra, for the
Yeah.
comics, and so I think it'd be kind of cool if they created just another character to kind of just do some storytelling with us as well. So yeah,
Yes. Yeah. Like new characters would be really cool. Yeah, and like I said earlier, a new era to explore would be great as well.
for sure.
So that's the Marvel Comics coming into an end with again issue number not I shouldn't say Marvel Comics and like not the whole Marvel Comics company, of course not.
All of them.
All of them, Spider-Man, Hulk, they're all dead. No, that's not happening. But this the mainline Star Wars comic and Darth Vader ending with issue number 50. Feel free to check that right up on our website, starwarsnewsnet.com. But onto something a little bit more funny. And I thought this is we ourselves even covered this as well on our site, but Spaceballs.
Oh, I saw this. Yeah.
Yes, the classic, the cult hits parody. Probably, I don't know about like what your opinion is on this, but is Spaceballs the best parody movie ever?
If it's not, it's got to be in the top 2 or 3. I
Yeah.
mean, it's so good. It's so funny.
Yes, Mel Brooks. And the whole
Gosh.
cast is great.
Yeah, Mel Brooks is just. I have a lot of respect for him. He's so good.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Everything he
So
does.
so this is up on our website as well. But you can check out our write up. But they are making a Spaceballs sequel. Josh Gad, he is attached to it. He is set to write and also star in it. Mel Brooks is also attached to it as well. What do you think about Spaceballs coming back, especially now of all time periods?
Yeah, I'm not sure what they're gonna parody on. Are they gonna try to parody on the sequel trilogy, on just
That's
anything
true.
Disney Plus content? I'm not sure what they're going to like riff off of, which is kind
Yeah.
of exciting. I mean, there's who knows? They could just make up something completely new. But I
Yeah.
know that Josh Gad he's lended his voice to a few Star Wars projects, like in the Star Wars universe. I'm not sure. I think.
Okay.
Hey, you know what? I could be wrong on that, but
Sure.
I think I've heard his name thrown around a little bit. So
Okay.
it's kind of cool that
Yeah.
I believe someone who's been involved in Star Wars is also taking it light enough that they can also just make fun of it too. They can have fun with the stuff. So I'm definitely going to go to the theaters to see this. It'll be funny. I know it will be. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, you know what's funny was like, I was just thinking about a sequel to Spaceballs. Does that mean like it's gonna include the same characters and everything too?
Yeah.
Is it gonna be like a direct sequel to that original movie from all the way back in the 80s?
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, so it'll be really interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, no, I'm glad to hear that like you're a fan of Spaceballs, because like it's so funny talking to some Star Wars fans today. They don't actually know what Spaceballs is,
Right.
which is kind of, well, I get it. Like if you're a Star Wars fan, you're gonna watch the movies. You're not gonna really be paying attention to the parodies.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, like for anyone who's in the chat who's watching right now, if you haven't seen Spaceballs, go and watch it right after this. I mean, so many classic lines: Pizza the Huts, the big vacuum that goes that like that from suck to blow.
Yeah.
That's classic. So yes, please go check. It's a classic for a reason, and it's getting a sequel for a reason.
Okay, so actually, my
Yeah, go ahead.
fiance had watched Spaceballs before she had ever even seen Star Wars. I mean, some people
Oh,
probably have that relationship with the movie. They've probably seen it and don't even know Star Wars that well. They know that movie better. So that's just how popular it was, and I think it deserves a sequel. So it's about
Yeah,
time.
how funny.
Yeah.
Um, I want to transition a little bit over to the video game sector. We haven't done so I've done a write up on this article from PC Gamers. It's not up on our website just yet, but PC Gamers just ran a new feature interview with BitReactor. BitReactor is the developers who are working on a new Star Wars strategy tactics game. Before I go any further, Luke, how big of a gamer are you? Because whenever I talk to Tyler about this, he some of it just goes over his head. And granted, I do get into the lingo, but I am a very much so a gaming person, as you can see by my tag. I have my own
For sure.
gaming YouTube channel. But Luke, how much of a gamer are you?
It's kind of non-traditional because I will go really hard on the video games that are in the Star Wars universe. So I've got an embarrassing amount of hours on Battlefront 2. I was just playing that earlier before I hopped on the stream.
Oh, nice.
And I've played a lot of Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor.
Okay.
So I mean, in the past couple of years, that's really like all the video games I've played, but I've gone really hard with those. Like I've completed Fallen Order on the like Grandmaster difficulty.
Sure.
I'm gonna be playing Survivor through again probably this year. So
Nice.
I'm a really big fan of the Star Wars video games as far as like the actual video game as a whole industry.
Yeah.
I keep up with some of the major news, but I'm not
Right.
like I don't have my finger on the pulse. But I'm a fan. I like video games.
Did you by any chance play any like strategy or tactics games like XCOM or even stuff like Civilization, Age of Empires,
I
Command
have
and Conquer?
not. Yeah, I
Okay.
have not played those, but I've heard of
Okay.
them. I have.
Maybe so what I'll do right now is I'll just drop the link in the chat for the PC Gamers article. But PC Gamer, excuse me, not gamers. But it's a really interesting article. I'll just drop it in the chat right now. And it's talking about their excitement for their upcoming strategy tactics game. And it's interesting because I mean, like you, Luke, they're trying to it's good because I'm glad you're here to talk about this too, because they are trying to reach like a more broader audience, general audience
Yeah,
who
maybe
don't actually
generalized
play
audience.
who don't actually play this kind of more niche genre. But so it's posted in the chat right now if you guys who want to check it out do want to check it out. I've done the write-up for this, we just haven't published it just yet. It's interesting because it is a niche genre. For those maybe who probably like a more comparative example would be like Baldur's Gate 3. For those who
Ooh,
again are
okay.
more how about that Baldur's Gate 3? Have you checked that out, Luke?
I've checked it out a little bit. I can't say that I've
Okay.
played it a ton, but
Yeah.
I'm very familiar. I play Dungeons and Dragons. I play D&D,
Yeah.
so I mean I'm pretty familiar with the style.
Yeah, the other thing I'd probably even compare it to is like even like for people who love like Warhammer.
Okay.
So people who love like Warhammer, who love like those like those miniature unit battles, that's kind of like the Star Wars strategy type that
Wow.
these guys are making. So there's a lot of cool stuff going in regards to the Star Wars gaming space. Which of these games do you think is like your biggest, the one you're really excited for, though?
As far as like this
maybe
turntable.
maybe before I actually just throw that to you, I'll give you a rundown for our general audience as well who are watching or listening. You have obviously you have the Star Wars Jedi games. We already know that they're working on a sequel of a third game.
Yeah, there's a
There's
third one.
Star Wars Outlaws coming out at the end of this year. There is a Star Wars tactics strategy that's being again worked by Bit Reactor. There's a rumored strategy game from the guys from Creative Assembly, who also have done like the Warhammer 40K strategy games. And there's also like a bunch of like remasters, of like even classic games.
Yeah.
Dark Forces, they just had a remaster of that one not too long ago.
And the
So
KOTOR remake is kind of in limbo.
yes, KOTOR remake. Thank you. I actually forgot about that one because it's something that like we've been talking about so much, and that it's like, where is it? And like they keep on saying, oh, we're working on it, but that one has been in trouble for so long, and like we've talked about it for so long that it's almost like, okay, whatever. Of those games, like, or even is there like a game idea that you think like you'd like to see become something? Like I'll just throw it to you. Like, is there currently like a game there that you're excited for, or if there isn't, like, what would you like to see for the future?
So I don't know if I'm going to purchase it or not, really, but I'm pretty excited for Outlaws, and probably even more so for the third installment of the Jedi games. Those two are ones that I'm probably definitely going to buy the third installment of the Jedi game. I've just been really into those. The Jedi are my favorite part of Star Wars, so that one's a lock for me. But Outlaws looks very good so far, and it looks very cool.
Right.
So I'm definitely going to be watching playthroughs if I don't buy it myself. So I'm excited for those two for sure. I'm going to be like paying attention to those very closely. So what is it for you?
Oh, like going into this, like even though they haven't talked about, so Bit Reactor hasn't shown off their game. It's still like a work in development, and that one is still very far off. But as a fan of like the XCOM series, the XCOM games, like I've put in like probably over 100 hours into the XCOM series. So that's why, like, when I read the article and when I did that write up, I was very excited because many of the people who worked on XCOM are also working on that game currently. So that got me really excited. For those who haven't played XCOM, that's another recommendation alongside Spaceballs that I'll throw out there. It's cheap for like PS4, PC, whatever. It's like on all platforms. It's very cheap. Pick it up if you haven't, and I promise, like, you'll sink in like at least 100 hours into these games because they're addictive, and they're a lot of fun. It's like virtual chess, or like I said earlier, it's like it's like Warhammer, where it's like you have these miniature figures and units that you move around the battlefield and that you command, and it's very fun. But even though there's not a lot that's been said about the game yet, or they haven't even showed off like a trailer or a gameplay or even a title, I think there's a lot to be excited for there. So that's what I'm most excited for. Those are a little bit of the news headlines from this past week that we just like to do a quick lightning round. But for this week, of course, we are going through the Acolytes. The Acolyte episode 4 just dropped. And before I get into that, though, again, feel free to, for all of you on YouTube or even on X, Twitter, feel free to drop a comment and, join us in the conversation saying what you thought of the episode. I have actually put out my review of episode 4 of the Acolytes. So if you guys do want to see like a full deep dive interview, like go through of like what I thought of the episode, feel free to look that up on our website. But for now, I'll just quickly summarize it. And I want to hear from you, Luke, you as well, what you thought of it as a whole. But I thought that this episode, I actually still did enjoy this episode. even though that there was like some glaring issues I had with it.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
big one I think for me, and I think that a lot of people had with this one, even within the Star Wars News and Crew, was just how brief it was.
Yeah.
And so
35-minute episode.
yeah, it was less than half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And the actual head writer, she went one of the writers, I should say, went on to Twitter to talk about why this episode is so brief. She mentions that it is the briefest episode of D8s, or at least one of the briefest. But she felt that this was like the most natural place to stop it, because the following episode 5, is going to be longer and possibly like have more to it, right?
Okay.
So I thought that this episode was super brief, and when it finally got exciting, it did get cut short. But I still liked it because there was still a lot of like mysteries being unraveled, and there's a lot to the plot that still held my attention.
Yeah.
And a lot of interesting character decisions, a lot of great performances. We always praise Lee Jung-jae every episode.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, Amanda Stenberg also, she's really great. I even thought Yord had some great moments in this episode.
He's put in a strong performance for episode 4.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because and I think even some people on our site have left like comments along those lines. But yeah, Luke, what did you think of the episode overall, though?
Yeah, overall, I liked it. And yeah, I was a little taken aback that it was only, it was less than half an hour. The whole runtime of like intro, show, and credits was 35 minutes. So I did see someone make this little joke, and I agree. Like one of my biggest problems with the Acolyte is that it's 8 episodes. I would take 100 of these, so it's exaggerated, but I am liking it a lot. And I kind of wish we were getting maybe closer to 45 minutes for each episode, because I like exposition. But yeah, I thought there were strong performances in this episode from especially Lee Jung-jae, like we said. And yeah, even Charlie Barnett as Yord is pretty solid. Even Chimere is he's putting in a strong performance as well. I really like the way he's kind of playing a bumbling idiot a little bit when they get on
right
bar. So yeah, I liked it. I wanted a little bit more, and I think we've talked about this quite a bit, but like the way that some of the really a lot of the Star Wars shows have like handled cutting episodes up, it's felt like it's a 8-hour movie and they kind of just randomly spliced it in a couple places. So sometimes you do get that feel.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, this might be a hot take, but it kind of worked for me that this one
really
cut off where it did, because it actually made me want to go to episode 5. Like it made me feel like, oh, I gotta get that next episode. I gotta see what happens next. Sometimes, and I'd maybe say more than half the time, when you get a random splice, you kind of feel like, okay, I guess the episode's over. But this one made me like gripped, like, okay, this is right in the middle of an action sequence. I need episode 5. It kind of makes me more excited for the next episode. Yeah. It worked on me.
Okay. So I had this discussion, and I mentioned this in my review as well too. And this was kind of also, this idea was floating around in our Discord server with the rest of the team. I thought, and I mentioned this in my review. I think that if they just dropped all the episodes at once, I think that would be a better format to release the show as a whole. Because I think as a whole, though, like I get what you're saying, like like in regards to the hook and the way the episode ended. But I think if they actually release the episodes all at once, it do the show a big favor. For one, it cuts down on some of the viewers and some of like people on the fans and people on like talking about it on online and through the discourse. It
For
cut
sure.
away all the assumptions that
Yeah.
people all are making. People I've seen people coming up with kind of like pot shot theories and kind of just coming to conclusions that haven't even been made in the show or haven't even been stated. And I'm like, where are you
Right.
getting
Yeah.
that from? But I also see that there is people are doing that because like all the episodes are just being left on cliffhangers and there's not like definitive answers. I feel like if we had all the episodes released by now, at least we'd have definitive answers and it wouldn't be dragged on like it is kind of like because I do kind of feel like it's like it's almost like a carrot at the end of a stick, and it's just like, oh, like you gotta stay till next week, because you gotta find the answer. And oh, guess what, you also have to pay Disney Plus an extra month of worth of subscription because of it. I feel
Yeah.
like that's a little bit of like what's going on.
Yeah. And
So
also, I think
yeah,
the way that the show is cut right now that we're being given, I think you're right. If we had it all, it's probably going to be from episode 1 to 8 a very good cohesive
yeah,
story. I think Leslie Headland has even said that. Um, so I think that with the way that we're getting it right now, that might be the better option.
yeah,
And I think maybe like the other option would be to focus more on giving each individual episode its own rise and fall and its own story to tell. Because I feel like they're using 8 episodes to tell one story, and I'm in the middle of like I'm ending my first watch through of the Game of Thrones right now. So I feel like
mm,
they have done a good job of like, each season has an overarching thing, but like each episode has its own rise and fall, rise and fall. So I feel like if we could have maybe got that better, that would work for a weekly
sure,
release
yeah,
streaming. So
yeah. Yeah, I think like some shows work better with the weekly releases, and some just really don't. And I like having all of these. Like I like having series where you can just blaze through it and go at your own pace, because sometimes like when you set the pace, it'll feel like much more natural and much more like something that you can digest easily more. Some people like the weekly releases too, and I get that as well. um I want to move on and talk about the villain, who we do see at the very end of this episode.
okay,
um Everyone, I saw the nickname Darth Teeth.
I've heard that
um
spread
yeah,
around.
that one's a good one. But obviously we do get to see him at the very end of this episode. So my thing about this though is that like I feel like now, and you mentioned Manny Jacinto's character,
Yes, yeah,
Timer. I feel like this episode leaves very little to doubt that he's the big dark side character.
yeah. I agree with you. It's feeling pretty obvious. Who
Right.
also wasn't there at the end? Basil. It could be. We don't know yet.
I mean, I think who did I say? Oh, I mentioned that I could have been Jackie a few weeks back.
Oh yeah,
Just as like a joke, and I was like, same thing though. It's like there's a height difference.
yeah.
Um, so not a whole lot given regards to the villain, but I mean, yeah, and like you mentioned, it's pretty obvious now that it's Manny Jacinto's character. He does do a good job of portraying like and putting on the show of being like, oh, this bumbling idiot knocks over this, and then he gets caught in a trap by May
Mhm.
in the show. I mean, what do you think about that though? Because like is that a bad thing or is that a good thing? I mean, I'm okay with it because like I think it'll be here's the thing. With this show, I think it's more interested in the why. It's interested in
For
asking
sure.
questions of like why did this person do this? Not like who and the what.
Yeah.
You know, it's not your typical mystery story of like where the question is, in a normal mystery is who did it and how did they do it. In this mystery, it's why did they do it? You know, why did May or why is May hunting the Jedi? You know, why did Osha decide to leave the Jedi Order? Those kind of questions. So I'm gonna say that, you know, like the show is probably more interested in finding out why Manny Jacinto's character is like this. Is that working for you though, Luke? Because again, like I wish it wasn't so obvious though.
Yeah. I will say it's working enough for me. I think it's really, and again, I think I'd love to just blaze through this show
Yeah.
as just a binge type thing, but yeah, it's not 100% confirmed that it's Chimera, but it's like 99. So I'm kind of, I guess I'm wanting, since we're pretty sure on that, that we don't have to keep kind of teasing that or keeping that in the dark from us. I would think I'd rather keep pushing the storyline of why, or keep getting more exposition or explanation of what happened on Brendock. Why did Osha leave the Order? These kind of things that are the why questions. I'm kind of hoping we get a stronger, faster push on that in the second half here, because I feel like we've set up a lot of building blocks here in the first four. So I'm hoping that all of this buildup will pay off and it will get going um, here in the second half, really. So
Right.
it's we're halfway through the show. I'm not going to say it's failing or not working for me.
Right.
I will determine that after I watch
Sure.
episode 8. But I feel like they've got a lot built up, and I think I'm hoping that we can really knock it all down and get some really good, solid answers here in the back half.
Yeah, no, we'll discuss that a little bit more, you know, coming up about like our hopes for the second half of the series because like you said, we are crossing the halfway mark. Um, yeah, for me again though, like I think they could have even just hid like the possible identity of this character even better. Like I think that the writing could have like hid it and made it less obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, like you though, I'm hoping that we get more into the why of these characters because that's again what this show is most interested in. I think that's what the writers are most interested in. And I think, you know, we can also discuss a little bit more about like how we would evaluate the first half. But um I want to also move on to another topic because this was I don't know how you feel about this. How do you feel about Kiadi Mundi?
This was a really apparently hot topic to talk about
Yes,
this week.
right.
So upon my initial watch through, I did not. I noticed it was a Syrian person. I know that's the same species as
Right.
Kiadimundi. So I was like, oh, that's a cool reference. And I finished the episode. I didn't think anything of it. Didn't think it was him. And so I hopped on Twitter just to see some people's thoughts on the show.
Yeah.
And people were like, oh, look in the credits. This is Kiadimundi. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I I didn't think much of it. I thought, okay, that's cool to include him in the show. We could get
Yeah.
just a little precursor to this guy's story. He definitely looked younger, so I mean, it was kind of
Yeah.
cool. What were your thoughts on
S-
them putting him in?
Right. So before I get just to do like a quick, I don't know, like in case someone like watching watching our show for the first time isn't fully aware of, you know, what happened regarding Kiadi Mundi cuz like you said, for someone watching this, who has no connection to the internet or to online, or is just watching this primarily and not even paying attention to the discourse. I think a lot of people will just watch that and be like, oh, they might even not know who that is, and they'll be like, oh, that guy looks kind of funny, or he kind of
Yeah.
looks like like he looks very phallic. Sorry.
Yes.
But like for someone who's watching the show, and they probably they'll just probably assume nothing of it. But for those again who aren't maybe part of the overall discourse, this was a big deal because Kiadi supposedly like this breaks canon because he's not actually supposed to be born yet. And here he is appearing in the show, and like way early in the timeline. And then also some people like there are also people mentioning that, well, he in the Phantom Menace, he doesn't really know, and he doesn't know much about the Sith, and yet here he is interacting with possibly like a Sith character.
And see, I don't think he even is, right? He's not on Kofar. He's not even really interacting. We don't know the end of this season, so I think people are also jumping to conclusions there.
Right. So
sorry to derail you there.
No. I'm also reading a bit of their the chat here.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But no, so Liquor Koba is also mentioning in chat about Wikipedia, and they went through a whole ordeal as the show was being let loose. I read that some people on Wikipedia were even receiving death threats because
I had heard that.
Yeah, because like they were changing Ki-Adi-Mundi's information in real time, and like right after the show had premiered, like they're trying to update the canon timeline, and people are saying like some viewers are saying like, oh no, this isn't canon, what are you doing, you're acknowledging the Acolyte as being canon. So that's a little bit of a breakdown of the cameo. And the thing is, so regarding my thoughts about Ki-Adi-Mundi, like you, I thought it was just a cool inclusion. And I thought that, to be honest, like I thought it was kind of just throwaway.
Yeah, I didn't feel it. It could have been any other character that they put in there. Really, it could have been a random, never before seen character, and
that is true.
Think it would have had the same effect. I don't think he. I think I do understand why they use Ki-Adi-Mundi specifically. But,
yeah.
He didn't like have this huge revelation or line or do anything super important to the episode. So I just didn't think it was that big of a deal.
No, I mean, that is a good point, though. I do think that it could have actually been someone else. Like, so from that perspective, I see why some fans might be upset. It's because, like, yeah, it could have literally just been someone else. The writer, man, I believe her name is Claire Kichel. But I'm gonna have to.
I think that is.
Yes. Correct. Okay. Thank you. But she addressed it on X and said like, that she was gonna write in Yoda to play that role, but apparently he wasn't available at the time. Whatever.
Yeah, like the story group did not allow her to use Yoda.
See, like so in that perspective, then yeah, I can see like why some fans would be upset because, well, if that's the case, then how come Ki-Adi-Mundi isn't technically available? Like then technically Ki-Adi-Mundi should be unavailable as well.
And so his birth date that was prior, to this show, was that established in canon, or I kind of thought that was a Legends thing, that where his birthday was. So I mean, I didn't think it was breaking canon. It was just something that had been assumed from Legends, and now it's being established in canon. I didn't think it was breaking anything.
Maybe if someone in the chat who's watching can let us know, that'd be like very helpful. Like like where it's actually mentioned his birthday.
Because I haven't read the book or anything where it mentioned his actual age. I don't
Yeah,
think it had been set in canon, but
yeah,
I could be
that,
wrong.
that's a good question too, because like of course, like you and I, we do read the books.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, I
Let's get
think this lines up with The Living Force that just came out in April. I think that book kind of enforces this, that he really at the end of the book, not trying to spoil the book, but he does kind of miss the point of the trip. I think the point of the book is to
Oh,
have people kind of really reconnect with the people of the galaxy. And he demonstrates that he does not think that. So I think that time and time again, this character has proven to be kind of misunderstanding what the Jedi
yeah,
are supposed to be about. So I mean,
yeah.
it feels on brand,
Let
really,
me
for this character.
so let I'll just pull it off my shelf because I have it.
And I'm very sorry, Cactus Jackson, but Mr. Bradshaw is on vacation, so he'll be
Yeah.
here probably next week, and you'll get to see Mr. Bradshaw then. But I'm glad you're
Um.
here right now. Glad for everybody in the chat.
So, The Living Force, John Jackson Miller, great book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm funny enough, I actually am going through it right now. I haven't
Okay.
I haven't made it. I'm about like halfway through it. So I got to the point, and it's funny too. Our very own Nate Manning tweeted out a very funny joke about like, oh, maybe the key to immortality or to long life is ice flavored snow cones. Because
Yes.
in the book, Kiadi just wants snow cones that are ice flavored, and then
No
the vendor,
flavor.
yeah, and then the vendor just goes, "You mean you just want plain ice?" And then Kiadi is like, "No, ice flavored."
Ice is a flavor. So yeah.
Um, so I do get that. I do get that sense that yeah, no, it could have actually been someone else. Um, Yeah, I mean, actually, you bringing that up though, like now that I think about it, maybe it could have been someone else. Um, the other character I thought that actually made a cameo was Plo Koon.
There was a
Yeah,
Keldorian Jedi, but I don't believe it was actually um, him. I think that they do have a name, and I think it's not Plo
it's
Koon.
not him. It's
Yeah,
not Plo Koon.
but it was close.
I'm just gonna look up when I'm gonna consult the Wikipedia right here. When is Plo Koon actually born? Okay,
Hmm.
because he might. Okay, it doesn't actually. Okay, so on the Wikipedia listing I'm looking at, it doesn't actually say his birth year. I think that would have been a much like. I understand like if that would like if they made him be the yeah be the one to do that. But yeah, no, I mean, and just in general though, like so I'll give like like I'll go ahead and take a stance here, I guess, like if I may. um I think though that like at some point though we do have to also acknowledge that we aren't the creators, right? And that like
Yeah,
the creators do have the rights to actually change things,
for sure. And
like just
George
like
Lucas
any
did that
creator.
all the time.
Okay. I'm trying to think like do you have like a specific example just to like
I've just seen a lot of interviews where they were talking about making the Clone Wars animated series
oh
and stuff like
yeah,
that, and
that's true actually.
he wanted to just bring back people that were dead, or
Yeah,
wanted to make a show that was between episodes 3 and 4. And he wanted to bring
actually,
back someone that was dead, and so
yeah.
someone
Now that
brought that up, like, George, I think that character's dead. He goes, I don't care. Like, George is about the rule of cool. He's
now that I
not
think about it,
into the
yeah, I
lore
mean,
really.
yeah, even Ahsoka, if you think about that character, like she did break kind of quote unquote established lore
Yeah,
when she was even created, because
it
here's a
was.
character that not even mentioned any of the movies. Didn't matter. Here's this character, and like she's gonna be here. They never talked about Anakin having a Padawan.
Yeah.
And here was Anakin as a Jedi Knight having a Padawan. And again, correct me if I'm wrong. At that point in time, I don't remember any other Jedi Knights having Padawans. It was always usually Jedi
Yeah.
Masters, right?
Yeah. That sounds accurate.
Yeah. So if you were a Jedi Knight, you still weren't going to have a Padawan just yet. It was Jedi Masters. So on one hand, like yeah, like I get why people like are upset. And I think everyone here has said too that everyone here has said even in the chat that like death threats, they're not cool. Obviously, like that's a huge thing. Like no, like I think we can draw the line there. But it is also like a question of like what is sacred and what is like established. Um, Stuff like this, I'm not like that's not crossing the line for me. But I guess I can understand where some people say it's crossing the line.
Yeah. And I think what would be even more fruitful is to just actually talk about like the scene that Mundi is in. And
Yeah, actually, yeah.
so we have a
Right.
cool scene where, a little bit in, we see the Jedi studying May and her fighting form. And
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that they don't even assume that it could be a Sith. They think it's a
Yes.
splinter order. They think it could be a rogue Jedi. And I think,
Yeah.
that's interesting that they just are so oblivious to what's really going on. And we have Vernestra leading that kind of small council, who up until this point, I thought it could have worked that maybe she was on the High Council, but it seems like this kind of confirms she's not, because she doesn't want to take this matter to the
right.
High Council. They'll involve the Senate, and they'll involve all this bureaucracy stuff. So I just thought that was a cool scene, and Vernestra really kind of leading that was really cool. We got a little closer to the Vernestra we really know in that scene, I think.
Sure. Yeah,
They're
and
at
then
the end, really.
no, thank you for bringing that up, because that is totally seeing the forest when so many of us are actually kind of caught up in the trees. If I may, like be a little bit blind.
Yeah.
But that's a good point, because it is interesting seeing the Jedi even here's so I get what you're saying. Like we're seeing the Jedi being typical Jedi, being caught up in all this bureaucracy, caught up in all this red tape, and not even acknowledging the evidence before their eyes. I think some of these people would have been like, "Oh no, that's disinformation." I that if we could use like some modern terms, but
Yeah.
I think that it as High Republic book fans though, and like you're a High Republic book fan.
Yeah.
Tyler is a High Republic book fan. I'm a High Republic book fan, as you can see by my like library behind me.
Ooh, yeah.
um I'm a little bit disappointed, because to me, and I've talked to Tyler about this as well, this doesn't exactly feel like the High Republic, because the High Republic to me is a time period where the Jedi are most unified. This is the Jedi at their peak, the Golden Age, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like here in the High Republic, they're responsible for so many feats. If you read the books, these guys stop giant meteor showers and giant space debris from falling out of the sky through the Force. These guys perform incredible stuff through all of that. But I think that like to me, it just doesn't feel like, I don't get that. I don't get like that this is the High Republic from this, and I get that this is the tail end of it. But I as something that was marketed and as promoted as being like, oh, the introduction to the High Republic, this doesn't this doesn't feel like it to me.
Yeah, and I guess we'll have to see in the coming years what really happens between 228 BBY and 132 here at the Acolyte, because clearly there's a lot of stuff that has taken place that has changed Vernestra to be a little bit more distrusting of the High Council. So I'm really looking forward to getting into Temptation of the Force, because I've heard there's a
Okay.
little bit more
Yeah.
explanation there. I have not
Okay.
read it, but I think there's
Sure.
a little bit more there. And
Yeah.
I think okay, so even after this little small council meeting, Soul and Vernestra get to meet up there in the, in the gangway outside. And so they get to have a one-on-one conversation there. And Vernestra seems much more caring, down to earth. She's asking, how could you have like covered this up? Like, she's talking about May as like this poor girl. How could you not know
Yeah.
that this poor girl survived? She really like has her heart on her sleeve. Like, she cares about even this person who has murdered Jedi Masters. She cares about them. She wants them to be okay and wants to
Sure.
save them from themselves, really. So I think that's a little bit more. That is a little bit more in line with the Vernestra that we know, who is
Yeah.
caring
Yeah.
so much. And
Yes.
yeah,
I
Yeah.
mentioned that before. Like this Vernestra feels very off from the person we read in the books.
yeah. And
So.
I'm thinking that, I don't know. I think, with the time that's passed between, Light of the Jedi and the Acolyte, I think it's just become that much more bureaucratic with the Jedi. We can obviously see their fall in the prequels, and so
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we're actually a lot closer to those Jedi than we would be in the High
Yes.
Republic. So it maybe feels like time has, or maybe it feels like the socio-political change has happened a little too fast.
Yeah.
For what we
I
think.
agree.
So
I agree.
that might just be where the dissonance is, but
Yeah.
we know that it happens. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It happens, but it's like it's a little bit too soon. So as we wrap things up, like I said, we're about halfway through the show. I want to ask, like, so you talked about this a little bit earlier. What are your hopes for the second half of the show? What are some improvements? What are some things you want to see? What are some, I don't know, yeah, like some big reveals maybe that also like just you want to hopefully unravel.
Yeah.
I'll start off. I'll start off really
Okay.
quick because I think this might be a little bit of a bold claim, but I kind of hope after seeing all these these previous 4 episodes, I think that I'm hoping it just has a definitive end. I'm okay. Like if there's an Acolyte season 2, I'd be like, oh, okay, maybe I'll stick around. But I think having like having a definitive end, actually, after having seen the last 4 episodes, I think like that might be the more smarter move. Just as, because if it's a mystery, there has to be an end to the mystery, right? So that's
For
one
sure.
thing I kind of just hope will happen. The other thing is another flashback sequence. There has to be
For
another
sure.
flashback sequence before before it wraps up, because there's definitely more to talk about in regards to Mother Anastasia. I know I wasn't here for the episode where you guys talked about that, but like I think that like Mother Anastasia and that coven of witches did not just die by the fire. There's no way.
Yeah, I think there's more there.
Yeah, there's definitely more there. So those are the 2 big things, and maybe even just hopefully better pacing. And that was it. That was the
Yeah.
other thing that I mentioned in my review for this last episode. Hopefully there is something. It's not cut up, and it just feels like kind of butchered.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of my hopes and expectations. Like, what about you, Luke? Though
I think those are good from like a outside the show perspective. I think I've got a few things that I want to see like in the show, and I think there was something really interesting and small that happens when Soul is asking Osha to come on the mission with him. He needs her to come, and I think Soul's wanting her as bait to get May. But Osha really had this little like twinkle in her eye that she like kind of asked like, "Oh, are you asking me to like join the Jedi Order again?"
Oh
And it
yeah.
felt like she really wanted to, and so I kind of
Yeah, that's a
I
good
want to
point.
see that just played on a little bit more and see if that's going to come to fruition. If maybe the end of this season could see her um, joining back up. I don't know if that could be
Mm,
in the cards or not,
okay.
but I think that could be interesting. I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know of any Jedi who have walked away from the Order and then come back and rejoined up.
Rejoined.
It's not something that's
Yeah.
been tread on a bunch. So I mean, if it has been
Right.
done, it'd be interesting to do it this way. And also, like you were saying, your comment of you're hoping that this season one has a very definitive end, and I think that's extremely possible and almost necessary. Because if you
Okay,
think about A New Hope, that has a very definitive end. There are no loose
that's
ends
true.
really with that.
That it
And we
kind yeah,
clearly
yeah.
we clearly got a whole cinematic universe from that movie
Sure.
that very succinctly ends.
Right.
So I think it's very possible, and maybe even could be a huge benefit to the
Yeah.
show slash series if we can get a good wrap on
Yeah.
this. I've also heard, just people throwing around the idea that if this becomes a multi-season show, each season could kind of be about a new acolyte. Say May doesn't survive this
Okay.
season,
Okay.
Chimere or the Stranger, I think is technically the name right now that we don't have a name for that masked person, but they could be searching for a new acolyte in season 2 or
Okay.
season 3. So I think that could be an interesting kind of trope that you
Yeah.
could spin very different ways, but it's the same kind of thread that you're
Sure.
going with. Thread from the witches. Um, but yeah, those are kind of the things I'm kind of looking for.
Okay.
And just seeing hopefully who this stranger works for. Is there a master for him? Is he the Sith master? Is he Sith? You don't have to be a Sith to wield a red lightsaber, but
You don't.
I'm pretty sure that this person's a Sith. So
Sure.
I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more about Sith lore. It's really felt Jedi heavy, and I think this was kind of marketed as more of a Sith story
Yeah.
on the dark side.
Right.
So I'm kind of
Absolutely.
interested to see if maybe now that we're 4 out of 8 are done, um, maybe if we go get some dark side perspectives and we get a lot more Chimere and May heavy storylines. So it's kind of what I'm looking for in the back half of this series.
Right. So we have 4 episodes left. There's still they have actually shown off some stuff now that like we know now that there are some stuff that are gonna appear in the second half. For example, we know Vernesha Rowe has to get involved because we do see her
Yes,
light whip. We
yes.
have
Jekki dual wielding green
oh
lightsabers.
yes, yes. Thank you for mentioning that. We even have Leslie Headland. She even mentioned that there's gonna be a new lightsaber that's gonna be
Yes,
revealed, and it's
yeah,
not the light whip.
yeah,
So there is a lot of action coming up. I'm thankful for that because actually,
yeah.
yeah, the action is for sure. And I like from your response right there, it seems like that is definitely one of the high points. Um, Either way, we want to thank you all for tuning in to Star Wars Listen Live. It's been a quick hour. It was a quick hour, but we really appreciate all of you tuning in. Thank you to everyone in the chat who have been leaving comments. We appreciate you. We've been watching and looking through that all show, and thank you for keeping it civil. I know like some chats in the Star Wars space just aren't civil, but thank you for doing so.
Yeah.
If you want to follow me, I have my own YouTube gaming channel called Good Games Dude. Feel free to check that channel out. I do content for beginners and even advanced gamers who want to develop their appreciation for video games. So feel free to check that out. I also have a talk with Tyler going up on our YouTube channel soon about Star Wars Outlaws. So keep it locked onto our YouTube channel. Subscribe, leave a like on your way out. Luke, is there anything you'd like to mention before we head on out?
I've got my Twitter handle down there, and you can come talk to me about anything you like about Star Wars or things you don't like, and we'll keep it civil because I love this. I love this universe, and so I just love
Yes.
talking about it. So,
Yes.
yeah, it's been great talking about episode 4. I I can't wait for episode 5 because it's
Yeah.
going to start off quick.
Oh
Hopefully.
yeah. Oh yeah. It better.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, thank you so much for tuning in to Star Wars News Then Live. My name is Jay, and have a good rest of your night, everyone. We'll see you next week.